Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. And I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning because fan favorite, former Congressman, current chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee, and now Assemblyman-Elect Joe Sempolinski will be our guest in the 7 o'clock hour. We look forward to hearing from him. We have not talked to him since the election. Last time we talked, it was Trump v. Harris, and what we were told was a very tight, nail-biting race. Things have changed, and we look forward to talking with Joe. If you have any questions, by the way, for either looking at it towards the Assembly, which he'll be joining here very shortly, or from the congressional standpoint, or from the chairman of the Republican Committee in Steuben County, or just in general. If you have any questions, please contact that number on the bottom of the screen. Oops, I forgot my first wave. A couple comments to get to. This one I missed during yesterday's show, I should say. We had Sheriff Jim Allard on the program, which received a lot of great response, and thank you for that. I know he appreciates the kind words, but I missed this one. Thank you for your continuing service in the community. That's for the sheriff, not for me. People like you are one of the reasons I still own property in the area. Local law enforcement has been very understanding, honest, and professional in the region. Thank you for that comment. And as I said, the sheriff just received such great comments on the program, and I can't thank you enough for sending them in. Next up, I feel that the Hunter pardon is one of the many diversions, and like a wound spring is ready to pop. Too many conflicting opinions to relax yet. So many stress points around the world. I feel stressed like things are brewing behind the diversions. You know what's interesting, too, when it comes to pardons, there's now a lot of speculation about who he will pardon next. And what's frustrating about that, and I wasn't going to get to this at first, but I'm glad that you brought it up, because how do I want to word this? They're using the pardons as a kind of a not so subtle attack on Trump, suggesting that he is going to preemptively pardon people that Trump could go after, that Trump could use lawfare on. Because now we understand the Department of Justice is politicized. Joe Biden's Department of Justice is politicized, says Joe Biden. So if in his mind the Department of Justice is politicized, and remember, they use the lawfare on Trump, so now they have to, in projection, say that Trump is going to go after his enemies. And they use that during the campaign. They're using it currently, and I think that's really, I don't know if Biden will end up preemptive pardoning these people, and he may, but I think more or less this is almost a press release to try to attack Trump on the way out the door. He's mulling a preemptive pardon for Anthony Fauci, Adam Schiff, and Liz Cheney. Are among those being discussed as potentially needing a pardon before Trump takes office, according to Politico. Fauci has been accused, and I understand the Fauci one, if I'm being honest, has been accused by Republicans and watchdog groups of lying to Congress about the origins of COVID-19 and the use of his private email account to do government business. Cheney, I don't understand, because, yes, she came out and campaigned. I mean, I actually think, if anything, Trump should say thank you. Because not only did it not win over any Republican votes, any real Republican votes, it really ostracized a lot of Democrats who said, wait a minute, whoa. Weren't we told that the Cheneys were pure evil for nearly our whole lives? Why are we saddling up to them? Why are we hitching our wagon to the Cheneys now? So if anything, the Cheney endorsement helped Trump. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. And then Adam Schiff, just because Adam Schiff has been lying about Trump, I suppose, for years now. Again, these blanket pardons, if he does that, again, it's just to suggest and plant that seed in the American people's mind that Trump is going to be vindictive. He's going to attack his enemies after 4 to 8 years of doing that exact thing to the now president-elect Donald J. Trump. So very interesting. So I understand that viewer's concern. I've got to give you an update. bad news for the show in the long term, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, so don't get nervous. Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, the super mayor, will be losing some of her political power. Not all of it, so we still have some to talk about. And if you're new to the program, the reason I mention her, and I start the program very often, well, unfortunately very often, with stories about why it's so important to know who you're voting for. And she has maybe become the poster child for that exact issue of knowing who you're voting for, especially on the local level. We talked about that with Sheriff Allard yesterday. Knowing who you're voting for at the local level affects your life more than, in many instances, the president, your member of Congress, your senator. I'm not saying that's not very, very important, but it almost unfortunately seems the more local you get, the more it affects your life. But Illinois super mayor lost a Democratic nomination for Thornton Township supervisor. And you may recall, I don't go back through the history of this every time because I bring it up just to start on not even a lighter note, but just on an odd note. She was not only a mayor of Dolton, she was also the Thornton Township supervisor, so winning two positions. So she lost the Democratic nomination for Thornton Township supervisor, a position Henyard currently holds. Henyard's name was not even on the ballot because she did not have a certified assessor on her ticket. All nominees are required to have 8 people on their slate: supervisor, highway, director, clerk, assessor, and 4 trustees. Instead, Illinois State Senator and Thornton Township Democratic Committeeman, Napoleon Harris overwhelmingly won the nomination. The caucus and its results enraged Henyard because Henyard's not one to take things lightly, as we've heard about the meetings. And you really do have to laugh when the concerns about her outlandish spending came to the public's attention. The council voted for an audit, overwhelmingly, unanimously, voting for an audit. And as mayor, she vetoed that audit. So someone that does not take things lightly, she went, I'm not sure where this was on, I think it was on Facebook. She went to Facebook and said, "You didn't run none of this the right way. Illegal Napoleon," she said. As a committeeman, Harris made the decision to move from a primary to a caucus, the first caucus Thornton Township's Democratic Party has had in decades. The party also announced that night that the supervisor nominees cannot run for other positions. Harris denied the process was unfair and insisted voters had their say. Quote, "People in Thornton Township may be new to caucuses because they haven't had them in a while, but this has been the tradition for many other townships around the state." Now, Henyard can still be on the ballot in April for Thornton Township supervisor as a write-in or independent candidate, but so far she has not shown any indication of running that way. However, after losing the nomination, she was heard shouting that she would be suing everyone involved in the process. Henyard is currently running for re-election as Dolton mayor, so she's still in that race, as she faces several ongoing scandals for allegedly embezzling funds and politically targeting her opponents. Her office also faced an investigation by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, ironically. Lightfoot's investigation into the village of Dolton's financial situation revealed in a preliminary report that Dolton's general fund balance was $5.61 million back in 2022, but by May of 2024, the balance had dropped to a deficit of $3.65 million. So from going from $5.61 million in the bank to owing $3.65 million. Lightfoot also disclosed that Henyard used a village credit card to make purchases at Amazon, Target, Walgreens, Wayfair, and other retailers. One jaw-dropping statement revealed that the mayor had dropped $33,000 on January 5th on Amazon alone. All right, so there's your update. Why it is so important to know who you're voting for at the local level. Now, I have had some people bring this story to my attention, a very serious story, and we have some breaking news on this. I don't want to run too late this morning, but I think when we come back, how about I'll do it that way? When we come back, we are going to talk about that United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson's assassination. I don't have a lot on it, but there is an update that came in late last night that we will get to when we come back. And of course, you can share your opinion on that. I'm also going to give you an update on former governor, disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, and his potential run for New York City mayor just quickly. Then we'll get into the pardons. Then we'll get into Trump having another big day. I'm not sure if these are press releases or if it's just a part of being on Trump's email list, but the days that shows that you have, I don't know how you word this, 10 missed emails from the Trump-Vance transition, something big's happening. So he had quite a day of nominating people for different positions. We'll talk about that and perhaps a little bit about Pete Hegseth as well. But we don't have a lot of time because we do have former Congressman Joe Sempolinski on the program in the 7 o'clock hour. So we'll talk about all these issues with him as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. A little bit of a snowy morning here on historic Marcus Street in Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. So the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson's assassin, may have left a message on the bullets he used in the murder. Now, this suspect is kind of interesting that with the Rockefeller tree lighting yesterday, no one seemed concerned that the assassin was at large, but this seems like a very targeted attack. The suspect who gunned down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Midtown hotel may have left a message on the bullets he used to kill the executive on Wednesday morning. The NYPD is investigating the possible message, which appears to include the words deny, depose, and defend, engraved on live rounds and shell casings left behind by the masked assassin after he shot Thompson several times at about 6:46 a.m. before fleeing. Cops have recovered 3 live 9mm rounds and 3 discharged casings in front of the Hilton Hotel on 6th Avenue, where Thompson, from Minnesota, was set to host an investors conference that morning, police officials said. Sources said several of the pieces of evidence each contained one word, indicating the killer may have been trying to leave a message as investigators try to piece together a motive. And I know, and this is coming from the New York Post, they were saying that his wife had mentioned that there had been some serious threats made recently. The masked gunman used a silencer and appeared to be an experienced shooter based on surveillance footage. He was witnessed lying in wait outside the luxury hotel for his target before he calmly fired off multiple shots at close range, causing Thompson to stumble and collapse. The CEO had a yearly salary of nearly $9.9 million. The gun had jammed, but the calculated, methodical killer was able to clear it, showing he was a skilled gunman, and continued firing as his victim helplessly tried to crawl away, according to sources and the footage. He then ran into an alleyway and hopped on an e-bike, which he rode north along 6th Avenue, where surveillance camera coverage is spotty. Almost very planned out, almost something you would see out of a movie or an action sitcom or action television program. But the suspect may have made some major mistakes that could help investigators easily identify him. He used a firearm with a silencer. He bought coffee, a water bottle, and 2 power bars at a nearby Starbucks before the killing, and tossed his bottle and coffee cup in a trash can, which cops dug out of the garbage and now have as evidence. Interesting. And investigators also discovered a phone in an alleyway near the Hilton, which they believe belonged to the killer. Investigators have obtained a search warrant to comb through the contents of that phone. A lot of evidence could also help investigators to determine a motive for the execution-style hit. Quote, based on the evidence we have so far, it does appear that the victim was specifically targeted. That's according to NYPD Chief of Detectives Joe Kenny. But at this point, we do not know why. This does not appear to be a random act of violence. Thompson led the country's largest private health insurer, which has a history of controversially rejecting customers' claims, and is facing a Department of Justice antitrust investigation. So there is an update, because I know I had a lot of people bring that to my attention after yesterday's program, and thank you for that. Okay, as an update, before we take another break, and feel free to weigh in on all the topics of the day. We have been talking a lot about Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo. He trying to tie himself in with the words that Joe Biden used, which is that there's a politicized justice system, trying to suggest that's what happened to him. Now, I think many people are rightfully so still upset that he was never charged in any meaningful way with the nursing home deaths. And even Democrats and Republicans, both, a bipartisan rejection of the way he handled that in the COVID hearings. There's an opinion piece from Jim Garrity at the where is this? I think it's Wall Street Journal. Got cut off. But it says here, Andrew Cuomo must not become the next mayor of New York City. Last week, the Jewish Insider publication reported that the disgraced former New York governor, quote, is preparing to launch a mayoral bid soon, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. After the article was published, a Cuomo spokesperson coyly termed it premature. Also last week, the Wall Street Journal reported that a longtime Cuomo ally had been sounding out potential donors about contributing to a committee supporting a mayoral bid. And just some of the things he's been saying and doing, we've seen a lot more interaction with the community, giving speeches, op-eds, interviews, things like that. Being on Netanyahu's legal team, which was very interesting. We talked about that at the beginning of the week. No matter how disappointed New Yorkers might be in Eric Adams, the answer is not to reward Cuomo, who set some sort of record for gubernatorial shamelessness by returning him to public office. Start with the sexual harassment allegations, the accumulation of which finally forced Cuomo's overdue resignation, though he denied wrongdoing. 10 women, including several former aides, a member of the executive chamber staff, a wedding reception guest, and a former reporter in Albany, accused Cuomo of sexually harassing them. 7 were willing to come forward and offer video testimony. How brazen was Cuomo? How seemingly certain was he that he could get away with it? Well, there was, at the time, he alleged, ran his hand. Well, I don't know. We won't go through all that. Okay. But it became so blatant that even Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand called for his resignation. But I've got to say, the reason he was brazen is for the reason that many people on the left become brazen, because the media propped him up and they would not bring up any of these allegations until they became too overwhelming. If you look at the way they handled him, almost godlike during the pandemic, going to his conferences every single day, his press conferences on COVID. If you recall, he had fan clubs in Hollywood. They were calling for him to maybe, again, I laughed about it yesterday, but they were talking about ousting Biden back then and putting Cuomo in to run for president. He was untouchable. And that's because of the power of the media, who refused to do the actual reporting. This was well known. His vindictiveness, the nursing home deaths, the harassment, they were well known. The way he goes after anybody who challenges him, but they were too cowardly to do so. And that's why it took 1 or 2 early on during the nursing home scandal, Democrats to turn on him, where other Democrats finally said, oh, is this okay? Because he can be very vindictive. So it took one leader to do that, and it took a lot of followers to push it through. But Cuomo's initial response to the allegations was to agree to appoint someone to investigate him. His aides allegedly leaked the personnel file of a former staffer to the media after her sexual harassment accusations went public. And isn't that great? Again, vindictive. As accusations pile up, the head of New York's vaccine distribution efforts called county officials to assess their loyalty to the governor. Speaking of the pandemic, Cuomo's spectacular mismanagement of that crisis should have prompted his ejection from office. And keep in mind, though, the whole time the media was saying that he was the shining light that we should be following. Yeah, he was lionized by the national media. His frequent news conferences presented as the sane alternative to whatever Donald Trump was spouting in the White House. Except what Cuomo did about the pandemic while governing was insane. I guess it helps when your brother hosts a primetime show on CNN and the two of you can do prop comedy shticks and Mom Always Liked You Best, Smothers Brothers routines. Cuomo enacted a policy from late March to May of 2020 forcing nursing homes to accept coronavirus-positive patients after they were discharged from hospitals. Naturally, this caused the virus to spread like wildfire among the demographic most vulnerable to it, elderly nursing home residents. A study by the nonpartisan Empire Center for Public Policy, analyzing data from the New York State Department of Health, found that more than 6,300 COVID-positive patients in New York were readmitted to nursing homes, and that more than 5,700 nursing home residents died between April 12th and June 4th. The admission of those patients, quote, was associated with a statistically significant increase in residents' deaths. In the upstate region, the report said, facilities that admitted at least one positive patient during this period accounted for 82% of coronavirus deaths among nursing home residents, even though they had only 32% of the residents. And we've talked about this extensively, but I thought this was it's a very good synopsis of why he should not be mayor, why he should not be elected to office ever again. And then he withheld the numbers. He that was part of that hearing as well. He withheld the numbers. He fabricated numbers. So continuing, just to skip ahead here so I don't run too late. Then he had the abuse of power. The governor ensured that his friends and family had coronavirus tests when they were scarce. Early in the disaster, state troopers were used to rush testing samples of Cuomo family members to a lab for expedited processing. New York City is beleaguered by worsening problems and faces a serious decision in the coming year. Technically, the election is in November, but realistically, the person who wins the Democratic primary in June is almost certain to be the next mayor. There are already more than half a dozen primary candidates, with more likely to come. Is there a mayoral campaign website starter pack that comes with a photo of the candidate smiling and arms folded on an empty street? Amongst almost all the declared candidates are self-described progressives. By some measures, Cuomo might be one of the more centrist-leaning options, but how much marginal policy improvement is enough to justify resurrecting Cuomo's political career and installing him in Gracie Mansion? Cuomo is far from beloved in New York. He left office with an abysmal approval rating, 28% or 38%, depending upon which pollster you ask. But it is conceivable that in a sufficiently divided Democratic primary, Cuomo's high name recognition could carry him to the nomination. So again, if nothing else, New York City should roll the dice on some new and different, ambitious, arrogant, entitled, power-hungry narcissists. I thought that was a very good piece by Jim Garrity, and I wanted to pass it along to you as an update from yesterday's program. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Hunter pardon. Not too much to cover. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Biden, actually the Harris campaign still, and then we'll talk a little bit about who Trump nominated, and we'll go through that laundry list. Yesterday was a busy day for the Trump-Vance transition team. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. A beautiful view on historic Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. Comment from Ken. Frank, last night on Fox, they reported that government employees received updated contracts recently that say they can work from home for the next 5 years. Obviously, a deep state first strike to try to derail any attempt of DOGE to get people back in the office. That's a great point, because that was one of the things that both Vivek and Elon had suggested, that right away make no more work from home jobs, because that would cause a lot of people to quit the jobs and make that step easier to kind of wade through who to get rid of and who not to get rid of. Social Security Employees Union secures a hybrid work deal until 2029. So those of you that are on Social Security, and that's being reported by Bloomberg, thousands of federal employees, but Social Security employees. Imagine if you've had to deal with the Social Security Administration, have to deal with the headache of that bureaucracy. Now, think about it, that you are dealing with people working from home. How confident are you that that has streamlined government? We have so many. Oh, yes. Okay, here we go. Another comment. So, yes, I agree with you, Ken. That is the first strike, saying, all right, you're going to do this, Doge? Well, we're going to get ahead of the game on this. And you'll probably see more before January 20th. A comment from a different viewer. Morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. I recall Cuomo claimed he had contacted COVID and did interviews from his home. Do you know whether or not he actually had COVID, or was he perpetrating a publicity stunt? I don't know the answer to that, but don't you recall that was at the same time he was doing that stunt, that he went out and was riding his bike and looking at a house he was building, and his future neighbor or someone riding by called him out for being outside of the home while he was using that. And whether he had COVID or not, this doesn't have a name to it, viewer, it was a publicity stunt. Either way, doing those interviews from his home. So they called him out. Aren't you supposed to have COVID? Aren't you supposed to be in the house? Isn't your own brother's rules that you were supposed to stay in when you have COVID? This is the rules at the time. And he got in his neighbor's face, remember? Because Chris Cuomo, like his brother, has a very scary temper. It's not scary in the sense that you're actually scared of his physical presence. It's just how off the rails he gets so quickly. And I don't remember the horrible language. It was just like when he was called, what was it that made him so upset? So I can't remember. But there's another time when someone stopped him. I think it was a nickname maybe Rush Limbaugh gave him or somebody gave him, and someone called him that name, and he went after him and got in his face. He just goes quickly off the rails. So to your point, I think no matter what, whether he had it or not at the time, it was a publicity stunt. But yes, he didn't take the rules his own brother had set up seriously, because he left his house, Chris Cuomo, and went to check out his new house. So thank you. That all came back from the memory banks. And also another comment from Ken, just to add to his point from before, add that with updated contracts recently, it'll be harder to fire them. Yes, it'll be harder to fire them. That's a good point. You've got the contracts there. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and we'll see more of that. The deep state, as it is called, or the swamp, depending on how you want to refer to it, is in hyperventilating mode right now. But they're also in let's protect ourselves mode. Bureaucrats are great at that. Bureaucrats, that's why, and I've never quite understood it when they'll say non-essential employees won't be able to work if we don't have a budget. And you say, wait a minute, just the fact that they're labeled non-essential employees, how is that supposed to tug at my heartstrings? But it does. It causes people to get into a tizzy. What Musk and Ramaswamy are essentially saying is let's get rid of those non-essential employees. But with bureaucrats, they are very good at protecting their job. We saw it back in 2016 with Trump. Unfortunately, I mean, you had a man that wasn't political getting into the White House, not realizing what's the word, the sandbagging, I'm trying to think of a word of just the way they protect themselves. Bureaucrats are amazing at it. So yes. Oh yes, Fredo, thank you. I couldn't think of what it was. I knew it was something from The Godfather, because then he suggested that it was racist. Yes, thank you. Boy, it was driving me crazy, because I couldn't think of him being called The Godfather for any reason. And yes, of course, Fredo, the brother of Michael Corleone. Thank you very much. Well, it was Rush, right? Yes. Fredo Cuomo, yes. Rush, rest in peace. I couldn't agree more. I was just having a nice conversation the other day about the late, great Rush Limbaugh. So thank you for the best viewers going. Let me tell you. You're always here to help me out. I don't even need Google. Did you see how we got to get another break? Keep those comments coming in. We're having a great time this morning. We all get excited when the former congressman is going to join us. But let's take a break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam on this snowy morning. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I was mentioning how great the viewers are, and let me tell you, they never cease to amaze me, and I haven't made this announcement yet because we've been in preparation and I want to make sure we had everything in order with the Salvation Army. The second annual, I mentioned this quickly, but the second annual Salvation Army Telethon on Frankly Speaking will be on December 13th, so a week from tomorrow. It is a big one, and here's why. Because of an extremely generous anonymous viewer, all of the donations that we raise during the telethon will be matched up to $5,000. Can you imagine that? Tell me another show that has that kind of viewership. So I'm asking you, if you are, I know a lot of people ask this year or during this time of year for donations, but if you are prone to donating to the great cause of the Salvation Army, well, the Salvation Army of Corning, we're going to have a kettle here. We're going to have a QR code on the screen during the broadcast. We'll also have a number, and I actually have the number I think you can actually use already if you wanted to get ahead of the game, that will count towards the telethon. You can text match, the word match, to 31333, because we're going to try to get as close to that goal or surpass it as we possibly can during the telethon. So please, I'm asking everyone to not only enjoy the telethon. We've got great music coming in. Our friends from the Crystal Chords already sending us music. Joe is going to join us during the broadcast. Joe Barlow, who's a friend of Frankly Speaking. We're going to have some special guests doing a couple quick interviews. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun telethon. But we want to do as much good as we possibly can for the Salvation Army of Corning, who, as you've heard me say over and over again, as we held the fundraiser back in the late summer, early fall, that there was a lot of need last year because the kettles came up so short. And that does not mean the Salvation Army has not been doing the most good for everybody in this area, as they always do. It's just tighter at the office, basically. but nothing has changed with the services they provide. So I'm asking you, and I mean, what other show has that? Amazing viewers like you, willing to donate like that to match up to $5,000. So please, if you are a Salvation Army donor, you can either stop by. We'll have someone manning the kettle, or we'll have the kennel out front. The kettle out front, not the kennel. The kettle out front. If you want, and you see me in the office, if you can't make it that day from 6 to 8, stop by, and I'll put it in the kettle here in the office in preparation of the broadcast on Friday. Or as I said, we'll have other, not this Friday, next Friday. We'll have other options so you can scan the QR code on the screen or text. And we're going to make it as easy as possible that you can give to the Salvation Army of Corning, because they give so much to us. I'm so glad that we could finally announce that. And I've been working on the Salvation Army telethon, and it's going to be a blast. I know you're going to love the music. You're going to love the interviews, the guests, and the fun time that we have. Okay. Did you see how Hunter Biden celebrated the unprecedented sweeping pardon? This is weird. Coming from the New York Post, they have a source that says that Hunter Biden celebrated the pardon of his crimes by watching a movie. Okay. Though that movie was about himself, as news that the first son had received a sweeping pardon from President Biden, he was settling down in Los Angeles for a private screening of the recently completed documentary that the nickname is Sugar Brother, Hollywood lawyer Kevin Morris made about him. Oh man, that's a weird. Anyway, the documentary somewhat ironically documents Hunter's recent legal struggles on the federal tax evasion and weapons charges, of which he is now cleared, as well as his efforts as an artist. It has been in the works for the last few years, according to the report. This goes back to the whole conversation we've had about the egos of the Bidens. You would think, as someone who has said, that's behind me and all that, you wouldn't want to rehash it in a movie, even though it's going to be a biased movie in your favor. Do you really want that on the big screen? But ironically, the man who spent a lot of money on Hunter Biden for legal fees and things like that, this Hollywood lawyer Kevin Morris, ironically spends money to make a documentary about something that is no longer relevant because Hunter has been pardoned. Quote, he's happy and a huge weight was lifted off of which he had been carrying since his dad got elected, said the source to the New York Post. Hey, I mean, I guess if you're ever in the position of having a sweeping pardon, that's one way to celebrate, by watching a movie about yourself. Details about the documentary have been kept top secret, and no production company, release date, or even information about who has worked on it has been released. Anyway. Odd. A comment from a viewer. Ken, thank you, Ken. Did you see the footage of Biden in Africa? He was confused, rambling, being helped on stage, and falling fast asleep in a meeting. I can't wait until January 20, 2025, when the USA stops being the laughing stock of the world. Oh, yeah, that was awkward. He called, what was it? He said the area was the country he was in. He called it a city, something like that. It's uncomfortable because, to your point, Ken, laughing stock of the world, we can all cringe when we see it. We can say, wow, he fell asleep at a meeting, and he did. It was, to put it politely, and you give Fox News credit, to put it politely, Biden appears to rest his eyes at African summit in Angola. The moment was caught on video, but you can cringe or maybe those that are really not fans of Biden can laugh, but this is serious. What message does this send to other world leaders, to China? I've had this conversation with numerous people. I'm shocked that China hasn't done anything with Taiwan. But what does it say to Iran, etc.? Biden's eyes remained closed for more than a minute. Otherwise, he was alert and gave remarks before and after the brief period. Clay Travis posted on X, Joe Biden fell asleep during a meeting with African leaders today. He's sharp as a tack, though. Honestly, this feels intentional. Who puts an 82-year-old on a plane for a 3-day trip to Africa? 3 days. So dumb. Well, one of the reasons is because it was perfect timing to release that pardon and then not have to answer questions, right? Many calling it embarrassing. Jake Snyder from President-elect Trump's campaign said Biden literally falls asleep during his own meeting in Africa. Who's running the country? But, we've also got to say, think of how the media, as they lecture us now, or they talk about Biden's legacy even, and that he should have got out earlier. It was the media and those like Pelosi and Harris and others that told us up until recently, folks, 107 days is how long Harris had to run her campaign. It's been, a month since then? Let's just say 200 days. Let's just round up. No, it's not even that many. Let's say 150 days. Biden was we were still being told that Biden was fine to be president for another 4 years, that he's sharp as a tack, that he's healthier than Trump. We heard in the debate that he could outgolf Trump. And again, I'm not doing the math off the top of my head. I can't give you the actual days of how long it's been, but it has not been that long since we were told that Biden was fit as a fiddle. And now I think it just goes to show you what you're dealing with if you're in the Democrat Party, and something you should keep in mind, how they will turn on you when it's politically expedient. Because now, after propping him up for 3.5 years, nearly 4, then ousting him, now saying he should have got out earlier, after propping him up for 3.5 years, because they want to make him the fall guy. He has been taking a beating from his own party. So yes, that was a very uncomfortable meeting, Ken. I do think it'll feel good not to be the laughingstock of the world. Speaking of taking a break, we'll be right back. We're Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security. Thank you so much, Boss Security. Contact them today. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Interesting piece. We're not going to be able to get to it. We've got former Congressman Joe Sempolinski coming in just a little bit. But Miranda Devine has a piece from the New York Post. Sucker Democrats took Biden at his word, only to be left with egg on their face and a broken party. She says, who are the biggest suckers in America? Democrats. They took the president at his, quote, word as a Biden, end quote, and now they're left with egg on their face and a party in ruins. Now even risk-averse Gavin Newsom knows he's safe riding with the pack when he publicly denounces Joe Biden for repeatedly lying that he would never pardon his son. Newsom saying on Tuesday, and keep in mind, Newsom he may even be the front runner in 2028. So he realizes, hey, it's safe to turn on Biden. The Democrats all realize it's now safe to turn on Biden. Once they ousted him, he was going to be the fall guy. And let's face it, Biden knows that. That's why, in many ways, he has been kind of behind the scenes vindictive. It is being speculated. But Gavin Newsom saying, I took the president at his word. I'm disappointed and can't support the decision. Disappointment, disillusionment, and despondency are the 3 Ds that have become synonymous with Democrats since their defeat at the hands of the Donald. MSNBC's brainwashed viewers are waking up to the lies that were fed on behalf of the Democratic Party as Joe and Mika trot off to Mar-a-Lago to grovel at the feet of the bad orange man. Rachel Maddow was crying her eyes out after she took a $5 million post-election pay cut from the $30 million salary she reportedly is paid to do one show a week. And donors are complaining that they got ripped off with Kamala Harris's campaign, and Associated PAC spent $2.5 billion. That's what she says. I think it's still 1.5, but who knows? One Democrat, James Carville, said $2.5 billion. Does anybody have any idea where that money went? The resistance is going to have trouble raising money. These funds are burned. They're gone. They can't. It's not a cash cow. The damage that the 2024 campaign, the damage that the decade has done to the Democrat brand is almost unfathomable, said James Carville at the time. And like I said, I can't go through this whole thing. It's a very interesting piece. You can find it for yourself at the New York Post. But even Nate Silver calling Biden a selfish and senile old man. Many turning on Biden. All right. But the questions being asked, man, I better take this break. Yeah, got to take another break. We got to play a little catch up because we got to prepare for the Congressman. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, keep those comments coming in. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security. Welcome back. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from Fred. Good morning, Fred. Why does nobody ask about how much money did Hunter have to accept on behalf of the Biden crime family in order to owe over $1 million in taxes, right? Aren't there Trump supporters who have done jail time for not registering as a foreign agent? Great point, Fred. I appreciate that. Thank you. Daniel McCarthy asked a question, will Democrats learn from this? And I personally don't think they will if you see what they're already saying and what they're already doing. I think it does take, I would have thought the soul searching would have begun after Hillary Clinton lost and Bernie supporters would have said, wait a minute, we should have had this, and you fixed the system so that he could never win. Then Hillary does the same thing that Harris did and ends up doing, which is get the celebrity endorsements and go that route. I was shocked when Kamala built her campaign on celebrity endorsements or celebrity performances now that we learned she had to pay for, because I think it was a disaster for Hillary, just like I think it was a disaster for Harris. But what Daniel McCarthy has to say is, with his presidency ending in a few weeks, Joe Biden's legacy is only getting messier. For many Democrats, he's the man to blame for returning Donald Trump to the White House. If only Biden hadn't selfishly run for re-election, the story goes, Kamala Harris would have had time to mount a better campaign. Or maybe the party would have had a proper primary contest to find anybody stronger than Biden or Harris. The trouble with this theory, and listen to this, the trouble with this theory is that Democrats haven't won a presidential election without Biden on the ticket since 1996. Now, perhaps Obama didn't really need Biden as his running mate, but he needed somebody, and Biden he felt was the best thing. So, and I don't want to go through all this. What Daniel McCarthy ends up blaming it on is identity politics. To escape the party, we'll have to rethink its identity politics. But given Trump's gains with black men and Latinos, Democrats may fear any retreat from affirmative action will unravel their already fraying coalition. By rejecting Harris and electing Trump, however, the nation's voters of both sexes and all colors sent Democrats a clear message. The question is whether they're willing to hear it, and I don't believe that they are. But I thought that was a very good point. And they're rewriting history. I mean, remember, just a few short weeks ago, Biden was George Washington for stepping out when he did. And you can't blame him for wanting to run for re-election when everybody was saying he was doing a great job, such an important president. They thought he was the only one that could beat Trump. And at the end of the day, we don't know if he is. Still not the only one that could beat Trump. I mean, if I were Biden, that would be my final speech from the White House. I'd say, I'm the only Democrat with a history of having beat Donald Trump. Go out with a bang, Joe. All right. By the way, Charlemagne, the guy that keep talking about during the election, and because he's a Democrat, but he's critical of Democrats and the decisions they're making. He was on The View yesterday and asked, in regards to the Hunter pardon, Whoopi Goldberg, why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? Because if you recall, Whoopi Goldberg's response to the Hunter pardon may have been the most unique, the most twisted into a pretzel to try to defend Biden, saying he didn't lie, he changed his mind, and it was Trump's fault because he knew that Trump was going to do. I mean, it was wild. Charlemagne called the criticism against Biden valid because Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time and act so self-righteous. The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to whether or not his son wanted to be pardoned. But since they were calling Trump a threat to democracy, and they were saying that nobody is above the law, but they were speaking about him, that's what they were running on. Now, Goldberg, of course, quickly pushed back that Americans didn't know that Biden was lying when he insisted he would not help Hunter, who had 2 sentences hanging over his head. Biden claimed in his statement, anyway, I don't want to go through the statement. We don't know why he changed his mind, Goldberg said. Charlemagne, who looked perplexed, said, you really think he changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a sudden? Goldberg shot back that Biden was sick of watching everybody else get over before he changed his tune. What does that mean? As the two kept clashing, Charlemagne argued supporters of both major political parties lack any objectivity akin to rooting for a favorite sports team. When it comes to political parties, if you pick a side, if you say you're a Democrat, you say you're a Republican, you refuse to be objective about anything. Democrats are not a monolith. Why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? He asked. Whoopi, I thought that was interesting. All right, let's take our last break of this hour in preparation of former Congressman and Assemblyman-Elect Joe Sempolinski. Read some comments. Keep them coming in. And we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security. Hey, look at this. It's the Assemblyman-Elect coming in. This is so exciting. Let's take a break and we'll reset here and prepare for the former Congressman and Assemblyman-Elect Joe Sempolinski. Keep those questions coming in. Though I will read this comment just before we go as Joe gets settled in. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. You'll like this one, Joe. If I knew for sure if you were married or not, which I'm not, I'd submit your name as a contestant on The Bachelor. Isn't that nice? Talk about making my day. But I could add you to Trump's shortlist for a cabinet position. You'd qualify. It sounds like you're in bed by 8, which says you're not a heavy drinker. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Thank you for that. That made my day. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, we have Assemblyman-Elect, Joe Sempolinski. How exciting.
It's all nice and
How many
legal.
titles do you have?
I'm Assemblyman-Elect. I'm former Congressman. I'm Steuben County Republican Chairman. All around nice guy.
There you go. Congratulations, man.
Thank you very much.
That was fun to watch.
We had a great night on election night. We did very well. We got about 68% of the vote in Cattaraugus County, which was where my opponent's from, so we ran a little higher there. We got 74% of the vote in Allegheny County. I think I got to 83% in Steuben.
Beautiful.
So,
thank you, Steuben.
Yeah, thank you to the folks in Steuben County, my home county, coming in.
Yeah.
Big,
Beautiful.
Huge margins.
Well, you mentioned it was a great night as now Assemblyman-Elect. It was a great night as chairman of the Republican committee, too, wasn't it?
So, I mean, we had a great night locally. So we had Andrea Bailey in the other newly changed over assembly district in the northern part of the county. So she is going to take over for Marge Burns. Actually, every single person on the ballot as a Republican in Steuben County won Steuben County. So there are people that didn't win their election.
Sure.
I wish Mike Sapricone had won his election, but he did very well in Steuben County. So there was no Democrat in Steuben County got more votes than the Republican in Steuben County at any place on the ballot.
That's impressive.
Federal, state, local. So it was a big night on the Republican ticket in Steuben County. So I don't know if that sort of sweep has ever happened before. I don't know, but it was sort of interesting to be able to pull that together. And I sort of sent an after action report to the committee people and saying, hey, this is the results of what happened on the Republican line in Steuben County, at least.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then, of course, we've got to talk. This is what we should start with. Because yesterday I joked on the program, we had Sheriff Allard on. And I said Media 101 should be that I ask him everything else except for the court case until the last 2 minutes, keep people hooked. But I don't do
Allard's
that.
doing a great job as sheriff.
Yes.
Allard's a dear friend. I was just talking to Jim yesterday.
Yeah, isn't that great? It was so nice to hear from him.
Yeah.
But we should talk about what everybody wants to hear. What did you think of Election Night on the federal level?
Well,
Did you expect a popular vote? I mean, I know as chairman, you have to say you knew he was going to win.
So I'll say this. I thought Donald Trump was going to win the presidency. I was concerned that it would be something akin to Florida 2000, where it comes down to one state and it's fairly close in that one state, and then it drags on for weeks, and goodness knows what happens, and that type of a tight election, regardless of any partisan policy, that would not have been healthy for the Republic, because you would have had all the controversy of 2000 in the polarized environment of 2024, and I was concerned for the Republic as far as how people were going to react to something like that. So whether you have Donald Trump wins an election very close or Donald Trump wins an election very definitively, which he did win very definitively, you get the same president, you get the same policies. But if you're going to say to me which of those two outcomes is better for the health of our institutions, clearly the decisive version of that is better. So the fact that we knew at 2, 3 in the morning, or I was asleep.
Good for you.
I knew I had one. So no, it was a long day, so I had already. I attempted to stay awake, but I was unsuccessful.
Totally understand.
And I think I woke up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, realizing I had fallen asleep, and then realized what had happened. But the fact that we knew on election night, even if it was, it's always going to be late on election night because the West Coast coming in. The fact that we knew that, and you have not seen any sort of. There's no way of saying that he didn't win, and there's no way of saying that it's illegitimate in some way because. More people voted for him than voted for her, and so it was very clear, and a clear outcome is something I think that we needed as a society, regardless of partisanship or ideology. There was benefits to a clear outcome.
I didn't see a scenario where we had the concession speech by either candidate the next day.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah.
I figured that would be something that would take days to weeks. And I was, the nightmare scenario I had in my head was, oh, we're looking at hanging chads in the suburbs of Philadelphia or something, and it's down to 50 votes in Pennsylvania, and then you have some sort of very negative outcome because of that. And that's not what happened. No. He won every single swing state. It's clear he won every single swing state. He won the popular vote. Now, the popular vote is from the outcome of the election. It's irrelevant, but politically, it gives great legitimacy to what he's going to want to do as far as his agenda. What he's wanting to do is forming his cabinet. You can't say, oh, some sort of fluke or trick or whatever. More people voted for him. Again, the Electoral College is what matters. The electoral votes are what matters. There's a lot of reasons we have Electoral College. I support having an Electoral College.
Me too. Yes.
But that additional blanket of legitimacy on the new president going into his term, I think benefits our society.
Isn't it interesting how election coverage has changed? Because really, you probably could have called that race by what, 1 o'clock?
It was looking pretty clear. Yeah. The math was getting pretty tough even before midnight.
Yeah.
That like something weird was going to have to happen as far as, oh, she's going to have to start winning states that she's not winning now. And it was, so I when I fell asleep, I was feeling, I think I know where this is going. But even then I figured it might be something where, for instance, in 2004, Ohio was the definitive state between Kerry and Bush, and you didn't really know until maybe into the next day or the day after. I thought maybe it would be something like that at that point. But it was clear and decided. He got to give a victory speech on election night.
There's still something about it, and I guess this is just kind of the superstitious person in me. Fox News was the first call. Totally trust Fox News. Right. I wasn't, though, going to believe until the AP called it. And that's only because, you know what I mean? You don't want that all of a sudden we're changing.
The more people are pointing in the right direction across the ideological spectrum, the more sort of clear it is. I would say the AP, I used to consider pretty neutral. Right. It's been pretty clear with some of the things they've said.
It's very biased. But that's what I mean. I needed someone from the left.
I see what you're saying. That it's not just partisans or people that lean a particular way. It's across the board. And that was also something that was healthy, that there was... you couldn't make that argument that he hadn't clearly won the election.
And it's amazing because I do watch the mainstream media because I want to hear what the other side says, right? So I'm watching the coverage all night, and they present the election, and I've said this on my show numerous times, as if you are a guaranteed Harris supporter. It's really interesting.
There's an assumption there if you're watching MSNBC or whatever.
Or even the main ABC, CBS. And I'm watching, I'm going, why are they telling me as if I voted, trying to ease my pain? Like, oh, no, she can still do it here. And at one point, because I stayed up the whole night, and that's why the show suffered. But at one point, I had to laugh because they're showing the map. And whoever the host was goes, I know it looks mathematically impossible for her to win, but we're not ready to call it. I'm like...
Right, and that just makes no sense. Right, because the point of calling it is you can't catch them. Yeah. And it becomes pretty clear at certain points where, because, for instance, how did I describe my race? Where I knew... So I'll tell you how my election night went. The first results that came in were, the first that reached me, were the early vote and absentee vote in Cattaraugus County. So these are the votes that I figured I would do the worst in. So it's my opponent's home. Good. It's my opponent's home county, and it's the votes that were not on election day, which tend to tilt a little Democrat. Thankfully, they don't tilt as much Democrat as they used to. We did really well with early vote and absentee vote with Republican voters this time. But I figured, all right, this is where this is the hardest batch.
Yep.
And I was up 10 points.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going, if he can't beat me with early vote and absentee vote in his home county, he ain't going to catch me anywhere else when Steuben and Allegheny come in. Right. And then Cattaraugus started to come in. Election day Cattaraugus, we did fantastic. So like if you're somebody that is intimately involved in a particular election, or you're a longtime media person, where somebody has to do well, and you can compare it to previous elections. Like, oh, all right, she's not doing as well in the Philadelphia suburbs as she needs to. So you can, within a realm of uncertainty, can say, all right, this is over.
It's all over by the
and you don't want to immediately say that, but when you're making statements that she can't win, but we're not going to call it, that's absurd bias.
No, that's all it was. But we got to take our first break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The snow is falling on the roof cam. Brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And this is the Stu Benz Senior Services Fund section of the program.
Prettier than Market Street at Christmas time.
During Crystal City Christmas.
Yeah, it sparkles this weekend.
This weekend, yeah. I hope we get a little snow for that. That's nice.
I have many fond memories of when I was a little boy going to Sparkle and being very cold and having a wonderful time at the same time. Which, when you're like 5, being cold and having a good time, that's tough.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we're talking about Trump now. Let's do a hypothetical here. If Harris had won the way that Trump did, right? The popular vote, the House, the Senate, would they be saying, well, it's not quite a mandate? It's not a huge. Okay. I just want to make
sure. About the media?
Yeah.
No, they would be dancing in the streets.
Isn't it amazing?
It would be, no.
So it starts they first start talking about a mandate, and then all of a sudden it takes a week. The shock kind of wears off,
right? And now
they're
going,
oh no, it's not a mandate.
Yeah, right. Oh, it was actually. Listen, he won every swing state.
Yeah,
he won the popular vote. Senate margin was bigger than anybody expected. I didn't think there was 53. They got. I didn't expect that. I think they were going to get. I thought 51, 52. Held the House. That was always going to be tough. There was a net -1, but still held the House majority.
Right.
I mean, if you can get a trifecta in the popular vote and win every swing state, I don't know how that is not at least to some degree a pretty clear mandate.
Yeah.
So maybe some of our friends in the media don't want it to be a mandate.
Sure.
But whether they like it or not, Donald John Trump is going to be the president for the next 4 years, duly elected by the people of this country, both electorally and with a popular vote mandate.
Yeah.
And people that don't like that should just come to terms with it.
Yes, and then let's not do what we did in 2016. Let's be, Now, I also want to get your opinion on the nominees that the nominations he's been making, because this is an interesting part for me. This kind of time frame.
Yeah.
Because first of all, talk about hitting the ground running.
He's been very quick. I saw a graph of the timeline of when people have rolled out cabinet picks, and he's been sort of ahead of schedule with that. So it's clear that he sort of knew where he wanted to go with a lot of these. Pretty quick. I don't think maybe he had a list, but it's sort of like, all right, I've got 3 or 4 people for this one and 3 or 4 people for this one, and then he sort of sorts it out pretty quickly, which I think sooner is better than later.
Me too.
Because people want to know. I mean, who the cabinet secretaries are is important.
Yeah.
It was a weird experience for me the day Zeldin got EPA, because I've never had a cabinet member's cell phone number.
I know, until today. So
I texted Lee, I'm like, hey, congrats, man. He's like, thanks, Joe. Like, oh my goodness.
Don't forget about me.
So I was excited.
New phone, who is
with Lee and then Elise also.
Oh, and that was great.
They have the 2 New Yorkers who I've spent. Mr. Zeldin and I spent an enormous amount of time together in 21 and 22, both in my capacity as chairman with him running as mutual candidates.
He was
at
in
the same
area
time.
a month ago.
Yeah, I hosted him in the
Tri-County
the Tri-County event with myself and my 2 counterparts and Shimung and Schuyler. We hosted a fundraiser leading up to the election. Our main speaker was now EPA Administrator Designate Zeldin, and so to have people that you've had a chance to actually interact with, and I think a lot of people in New York have had a chance to either interact with Lee or Elise over the years, be in those positions that are very important positions of authority, is exciting for New York. And I think both of them will sail through their confirmation. I haven't heard any problems regarding former Congressman Zeldin or Congresswoman Stefanik. And but they're important. These are, if you're who's running these large bureaucracies, and I think the general public has come to understand even more so over the last several years the type of impact a bureaucracy and an administration can have on somebody's life. Obviously, the elected officials get a lot of attention, but the unelected folks, they need to have a lot of attention too. The so-called deep state folks. So you want to have good people in cabinet positions, and so the public is I think, becoming more aware of how important those positions and appointments are. And so there's been more discussion and more attention, I think rightfully so, on who is Donald Trump picking for each of them. And it's, everybody's got their own particular opinions on each particular person, but I've been pleased to see how fast he's been doing it, how decisively he's been doing it, and I've been pleased with how much attention the public is paying to it and how seriously they're taking it. They didn't just tune out as soon as the election ended. They want to know who's
except for the
what.
MSNBC viewers.
Yeah,
have you seen those ratings?
Their ratings are low.
Wow.
And I think
now tell me that's fair. So I for now 20 years have been doing a show, just with a little break, where I'm doing 3 hours a day here, 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
Every day, every weekday.
Absolutely.
I don't get $30 million. Rachel Maddow does one show a week.
I do it for 29.
I know. She's getting 25 now.
I'll do it for 24. Yeah. I'll update her. No.
It's amazing. You can tell that that's a big issue because you have people like Gutfeld and others. Everybody's going, what?
Yeah.
If you're in media,
well, they had built their entire MSNBC had built their entire model on TDS, right? Trump Derangement Center. And now Trump is going to be president. Like I said, that sort of the thought of, well, maybe we can get him or something that I think people on the left had. He's going to be president. And then also they build their model on elections, and Trump's in a unique position where he's never going to be on the ballot again.
Right.
So he's going to run the country. There is no next election as far as him. And so the whole thing that they had spun all these people up into has dissipated in a couple different interesting, weird ways, and now they're doing something else. Yeah. They don't need their fix anymore because there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do, right? Yeah, exactly. There's nothing you can do about it. They can't fantasize that somehow the world's going to be different than how they want. The world's going to be how they want it to be as opposed to how it is. And they were peddling this fantasy to people, and that fantasy proved to not be reality, and now people have maybe moved on to something else.
And I think
they fouled up their model as opposed to just telling people what's going on in the world, right?
What their jobs supposedly. But if you look at Joe Scarborough, why do you call someone Hitler that long and then go and meet with Trump? And I think they thought they were doing something.
The next week.
And I think they thought they were doing something shocking and that people would like that. Right. And it had the after effect. I'm a media guy, so I'll talk media all day. Since we are talking election, we got away from that. We'll go back to that in a second. But do you think, I read a great piece a couple weeks ago, do you think this is finally the end of the importance of celebrity endorsements? Because I actually thought after Hillary's loss, I'm like, Harris isn't going to embrace that as much. Because a lot of people pointed to that as being out of touch.
Right.
And then not only did we learn, obviously, that she took these quote-unquote endorsements, she was paying for a lot of them.
Yeah, she was paying for appearance fees in 7 figures for some of these.
And productions and things like that.
Yeah, right. They were setting up custom sets for the podcast.
Yeah, but rebuilding it, because that's what they wanted Joe Rogan to do, too. But that Call Her Daddy or whatever it's called, they built that set in a hotel room to look just like her set. Yeah. Sets aren't cheap.
For the record, I come on, frankly speaking, for free.
Absolutely
I do it for the love of the game.
And exactly,
I don't get a penny for this. This is fun and games to me. I love this.
Yeah. It's funny. This is actually in a hotel room right now.
That's right. We built a set custom every time. But yeah, it was. So there's a couple things there. One is how poorly spent the massive amount of money that the Harris campaign had. They said $1 billion.
1.5, and they spent it in 107 days.
They spent an enormous sum of money.
And they're $20 million in debt.
Right, fast and in debt. So they had no idea how to manage a budget. No. They had no idea how to efficiently use funds to actually get to the voters you need to talk to. They were all messed up. So that sort of shows just how poor a campaign the Democrats ran at the national level. But yeah, I think, it's interesting watching sort of these cultural shifts, and we described just a minute ago that I think your average person maybe isn't a political junkie, but they're certainly a little bit more aware than they were 10 years ago, right? And so you're seeing, I care who the Secretary of Agriculture is, maybe when they didn't even know there was a Secretary of Agriculture before. That's a healthy thing. Yeah. I think another part of the cultural shift that's happened over the last 2, 3, 4 years is, celebrities are interesting. They live fun lives, whatever. But people are much more quick to say, I don't really care what they think.
Right.
Just because I like watching your movie or I like listening to your song doesn't mean that you're the person I'm going to go to for advice on who should run the United States of America.
Right.
And I think that's also a healthy thing, where everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah.
And I would encourage, frankly, I would encourage everyone to be involved politically and express their opinion politically and have an open discussion and dialogue. So I don't begrudge anyone, whether they're a celebrity or, even more importantly, not a celebrity, participating in the political process. But just because you have a gold record or an Oscar doesn't mean that I'm going to listen to you more or less about who's going to run the country.
And there's also the other side to that, where if you're struggling to put food on the table and you look at a celebrity that you can't even afford a ticket to their concert if you wanted to, you look at Bruce Springsteen, who has lectured us about the 1% for 10 years.
And he's in the .00001%.
Exactly. He's charging $300 for a general admission ticket. It's hard to take him at his word or to accept what he says when it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and this ties just to a bigger problem with the Democratic Party that I think was highlighted in this election, where there has been this shift where Democrats made the argument 20 years ago or 10 years ago that they were the party of the little guy, and somehow Republicans were the party of the elites.
Right.
And Democrats are clearly now the party of the elites, and the Republicans are clearly the party of the average person. And they have the whole tone of the Democratic Party has become disdainful to your average person's concerns. The average person will say, I'm concerned about buying eggs and milk at the store, and the Democrats' response is saying, well, you don't really understand how inflation works.
Yeah.
So
look at page 38 of this.
So as opposed to what the Republicans were saying is, you're right, we need to make that better.
Yeah.
And
did you see that? I think it was the DNC. Don't quote me on the DNC had retweeted something that said, like, economy's good, this is good,
right?
And this is
Bidenomics,
and then and then they wrote at the top, so you couldn't afford eggs, huh?
Yeah,
that's still
they're
out
still
of touch.
Sort of mocking you.
They're
for
mocking the common voter
that you're having a problem, and everything's backwards with that whole model. One, they're gaslighting people, which. People are not stupid. And I've said this before on this show, but I think my common theme that comes up every time on the show is pointing out that people are not stupid and the average voter is smart. But it's supposed to be how this is supposed to work. The whole system is supposed to work. Us as a people, us as an electorate, we have problems and concerns with how things are going. Yeah. We want to be safe and secure. We want to be prosperous. We want to have hope for the future for our children. We want a good education. All these very basic things that every human being, regardless of race, color, or creed, want. Right. And regardless of ideology, want. And you come to the government saying, hey, we want you to fix these problems. We want to elect people who are going to go fix these problems. And the Democrats' response to that is those problems don't exist. You don't understand. Yeah. And they talk down to everybody.
And self-righteous.
It's very self-righteous. And if you don't go along with whatever the kooky orthodoxy that just came out on social media was, then you're attacked for being some sort of bigot.
Yeah, that didn't help.
And and it's repeated, and it moves very fast, so you can't keep track. So they're in this bubble of absurdity in these ultra elite, quote unquote elite. They're not really elite. No. Ultra elite liberal cities, and they have not only do they not know, they don't care what's going on in the rest of the world. And when you present it to them saying, please help us, they attack you for it. That's not a formula for success. Your average middle of the road voter, maybe they're center right, center left, independent, and those are the folks that decide elections as far as general elections. Certainly primaries are different, but general elections, they just want things to be normal and healthy and good, and they want to have prosperity and security and freedom. It's not an unreasonable ask for people, and the Republicans have done a much better job of relating to and just being normal.
Yes, I know. It's ironic that they kept saying
the Democrats are weird.
Right? Isn't it weird that they took that word and I mean that was the whole campaign, joy, vibes. Right. It was such a dull. I don't even know. There was no substance.
As we said prior to the election, did the Democrats really want to open the weird can of worms when let's put some of the folks up and see who's weird and who's not.
Yeah, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Oh no, the snow must have got the roof cam. But we still thank Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business. It is beautiful. That's interesting. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. Oh, got my wrong view up. We have, during the Stu Ben Senior Services Fund section of our program, and in the Hesselson studio, the Assemblyman-Elect, former Congressman, 13 other titles. Joe Sempolinski. Just call him whatever you want.
Joe is easy.
Yeah. Joe. Can I just call you Joe? Comment from a viewer regarding celebrity endorsements. Now that I know that this or any celebrity is a Democrat, I will no longer watch them, let alone like them. I think there is some backlash.
People are clearly, that is, the people put out their opinion in the world and people respond to it. My feeling is I want to encourage people to participate in our democracy, to participate in our republic. And so I want people to put their ideas out there. What I would love to have is more celebrities being willing to say they're conservative or Republican. And there has been more of that lately. So let's get all the ideas out there. Let's get everybody talking, and let's work all together in one big discussion as to what's best for the country.
Another comment: Democrats are not only weird, but they have no clearly defined direction and are willing to lie outright in order to get you to side with them.
You mean like saying I won't pardon my son
for 100 times? Yeah,
and making that like your moral clarity, and then pardoning your son?
Yeah,
that would be maybe a fib.
Now, buckle up for this one, Joe.
All right.
Will there ever be a time that Joe or Phil run for governor? We need their down-to-earth leadership in New York.
I think Phil Palmisano would be an excellent governor of the state of New York.
Very beautiful. Great way to answer that. We were talking about the celebrity endorsements. I also think they made a tactical mistake when they obviously had Liz Cheney endorse and make a big deal of that. And then on the other side, and I know it's anecdotal, I don't like to bring up anecdotal, but I had a few friends that were Democrats, and I think they probably still are, but they liked that Trump had people like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, because they started to feel that this isn't about left or right, it's about, quote unquote, making America great again, about giving you so you can have a savings account and groceries.
The Democrats gave Trump a big opportunity with that, where we're very polarized, left and right, but I screw up the left and the right here, but the Democrats' big blob sort of kept going left. Left. I don't know how that'll appear on camera. It's my left.
I still don't have it figured out.
But, and so when that big chunk keeps going left and their policies keep going left, you open up this big gap in the middle, and you open up this gap for independents who maybe hadn't been on one side or the other, but they notice, all right, maybe I don't agree with everything Donald Trump says, but he's a lot closer to me than these people are.
Yeah.
And you open up, and what you're seeing with RFK Jr., who is a pretty liberal Democrat.
Yeah.
It's not like he's a conservative. Tulsi Gabbard, who's a more moderate Democrat. They're saying, well, now there's this chunk of what was the Democratic Party going, this isn't really what I signed up for, some of these real extreme things. And they're at least willing to consider going with the other team and trying out. I think you're seeing it in New York City with regular voters who are concerned about law and order type stuff, going, oh my goodness, the Democrats run this city. I don't feel safe. I'm at least going to look at the other side. The biggest swing as far as percentage for the Republican Party, as far as the presidential level, from 2020 to 2024 was in New York State. Donald Trump lost New York State by 22 points 4 years ago. He lost it by 11.5 this time. That's cut the margin in half. That's the biggest percentage swing in the entire country. And where that came from was a lot of downstate voters. So you had the reason we didn't get massive gains in the state legislature or the Congress was you had neighborhoods that Republicans were losing by 50 points that now they're losing by 30 points or 20 points. So you're still losing, but from a statewide perspective, you're picking up a lot of votes. From a popular vote, this nationwide perspective, you're picking up a lot of votes. And who knows where that goes in the future, in a governor's race or in a state legislative race in 26. So the fact that you have these people that have been voting Democrat or registered Democrat, whether they're celebrities or elected officials or regular folks in Queens or Brooklyn or what have you, going, oh my goodness, these folks are weird. They're bonkers. Let's at least try the other team. And
like Trump would say, what do you got to lose?
What do you got to lose? Right. So do I agree with Tulsi Gabbard on every issue? No, I do not.
No.
Do I agree with RFK Jr. on every issue? No, I do not.
Right.
But would I rather have these folks being interested in affiliating with the Republican Party.
Kennedy affiliated with the Republican
Than
Party.
the Democratic Party? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to have them moving our way. No doubt about it.
Do you remember when Bobby Kennedy was at some event and the whole crowd starts going, Bobby, Bobby, and Trump jokingly says, don't get too popular, Bobby. So I want you to keep that in mind when I say these next comments, Joe. All right. First off, Joe has always put things into words that I'm thinking about so perfectly. I will never miss a show. Always makes us laugh out loud. Thanks, Joe.
I appreciate that. That's very nice.
Next up, I hope Joe has time to be on when he's in office. You'll be able to come on, right?
Yeah, I mean, there may be times where I'm in Albany, but we can always do the virtual. My plan is to continue. We do this once a month, barring other circumstances. As far as sometimes it's more often than once a month, but that would be my plan, is to continue doing this. And I think, I view the interviews I do here. One, I enjoy them just because Frank does a great job, but I think it's part of my role as chairman and as elected official to have somebody who can discuss these matters in a way that is relatable to people. I'm a regular guy from the Southern Tier, so I sort of sound like a regular guy from the Southern Tier, and people respond to that, I think. So that was very kind comments.
All very nice. All right. So I think, and I've talked about this in the past, I think that Republicans kind of had an awakening after Romney, right? So it was McCain's the only way we can win. Romney's the only way they can win. And then when Trump came down, it was Jeb's the only way we can win. And I think Republicans finally said, enough. Like the elites aren't going to keep telling us what to do. What do we got to lose, right?
Right.
Do you think, I thought it was going to happen after Bernie had no chance and the fix was in and Hillary won it and then Hillary lost. I thought they were going to have a soul-searching moment that why they didn't.
They so far haven't after this election.
And that's what I'm going to say. So you don't think, do you think they have a Romney moment? I mean, the Democrat voters, not necessarily
sort of waking up that, all right, this isn't working, we got to do something different. I think it's a possibility. I've seen I read an interview with Rahm Emanuel. Okay. You may remember Rahm Emanuel was Obama's chief of staff. He was mayor of Chicago. He was congressman for a while, and he became ambassador, I think, Japan or something.
One of those things.
Don't quote me on which country he's ambassador to. But he was sort of saying, we got to get back to being normal or what have you. But perfect example of where I think there may be a problem.
Yeah.
So you had Seth Moulton, who's a congressman from Massachusetts, ran for president. If you blinked, you missed it.
Yeah, you're right.
4 years ago. And so he made a comment regarding the transgender girls sports issue, saying, I think it's reasonable to say I have daughters. I don't want them competing with biological males in sporting arena. That's not safe. That's not fair.
Right.
And that. He says, as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that, I believe is close to what his quote was. His campaign manager quit the next day.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to be affiliated with a bigot.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
And he had protests outside his office from the left. Mm-hmm. So all he said was, it seems pretty logical, that if you're biologically a woman,
right,
you shouldn't have to compete in sports with somebody who's biologically a man,
right?
Which, like 5 minutes ago, everybody in the world believed,
right.
And that's the reason why we have girls' sports at all.
Yeah, which was a historic thing when it happened.
Right. The reason why we have girls' teams is because everybody knows, on average, boys are taller and heavier and have more upper body strength. So you need, if anybody's going to compete, you have to have a separate team for the girls. Otherwise, there's no point.
Right.
Seems pretty simple.
Yeah.
For just stating, I'm concerned about my children being safe if they're competing on sports with a biological male, all heck breaks loose. Right. And he's a liberal Massachusetts Democrat.
So that goes they're not learning.
They're not learning. Not so far.
But maybe the voters. Who knows? And I jokingly said, and I said this before Rogan or anybody, I do have to say that Biden would be the happiest person in the world if Trump won. Because, right, like he could call Nancy Pelosi and say, see, I told you so. But can you imagine now that how despicable these politicians can be, that Nancy's blaming him for not getting out early enough? I mean, listen, I know they can say that, but a week before he was George Washington. He should be on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. They're saying, he's the most significant president of the 20th century, which that's insanity. I don't know where that came from. That talking point was bonkers.
Yeah.
And now, he should have gotten out early or whatever. And now, Joe Biden took a big poo on his legacy.
Yeah.
I can say poo on
I think, you did.
Poo is good. There are other words for this you can't say. But poo, I think, is G-rated.
Yeah.
By pardoning his son.
Yeah.
Who, my statement on this, and I'll say it now in the air, is the reason, and this is just from what people have said to me as I've been out and about campaigning and being just in the world last year. My take on where people come, your average person comes to this, the reason this infuriates them so much, the whole Hunter Biden thing, and we can get into the censorship of New York Post and all these other things, but if you or I, or anybody out there in TV land, was on tape doing the debauched crimes.
Yeah, he did.
You can't smoke crack with prostitutes. You can't monetize
and
the
you
name
have
of your
the
father.
proof.
Right. It's on tape.
Yeah.
If you were doing these things, there would be severe consequences. And for Hunter Biden, again and again and again, for his entire life, there are no consequences. And now, it's not just, I'm going to commute the sentence because he's my son, which I would disagree with. That would be wrong.
Right.
It's a blanket pardon
like never been
for 11 years for all federal crimes that he may have committed.
Known or unknown.
Who knows what else the guy's a maniac.
Yeah.
Who knows what else he was doing.
Known or unknown crimes. Imagine that. And you're right.
And Joe Biden, and Joe Biden was an elected official for whatever it was, 50 years or whatever. In 100 years, the first thing you're going to remember about Joseph Biden is he pardoned Hunter Biden.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
That's his legacy now.
And that's the road he chose.
Which was insane.
Did you? I think.
And I wasn't even surprised.
No.
I was angered.
Yeah, me too.
And I was frustrated.
Yeah.
I was not surprised one bit.
Not. And I think Stephen A. Smith had an interesting point. And he said, which I don't normally say, and on a political show, it's just kind of weird.
Yeah,
but his argument was essentially that if Biden would have just came out and said, "It's my son,"
I still would have disagreed with it, but it would have gone down a lot easier.
Instead, he talks about his own Department of Justice being politicized. So now he's made it 3 steps harder for Democrats to try to defend all that. So now he's sounding like Trump. I mean, the whole thing is it gets confusing. Like you need those charts to
Trump's
figure out.
got covered to pardon whoever he wants now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the idea that arguably, I would argue Hunter Biden may be the most privileged person on the planet.
Yeah, at this point. Yeah.
That somehow he has gotten a raw deal.
Yeah.
And has been targeted and persecuted and is, this.
It's
Hunter Biden's a 54-year-old man.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sorry he's got an addiction.
Yeah.
But he's made choices with his life that are crimes.
Yeah. And he should pay for it.
And he should pay for them. And he's not some kid that made a mistake. He's a 54-year-old man who's been doing this for years, and he was living off it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's so frustrating. And I think that's why Democrats are really upset right now because they can't defend this.
They can't.
No.
It's indefensible.
And it's like so many, even on the left, are saying, think of what this does for Trump. If Trump wants to, and I think that's all overhyped, by the way, this idea that they keep saying that Biden might even preemptively pardon Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney. Come on, that's just a PR move to try to make
this
it
is
sound
his son. This was a different thing for him. So he was willing to burn down his political legacy because it was his kid.
Yeah.
Again, poor judgment when Joe Biden, takes the cake and poor judgment. Yeah. But, I have never been so not surprised and yet so frustrated by an action in a very long time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We got to take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Speaking of Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security, but the snow is taking out the Roof Cam, but we still thank Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of the program. Joe Sempolinski in the studio. A couple quick comments, Joe. Oh, see, someone read between the lines, and now they're saying I'm doing a good job. Not just you.
I think Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Frank's been doing it for years, man.
Thank you.
Here in Corning.
Thank you, Frank. I just started watching you this year, and you are a breath of fresh air. Your platform takes on both sides, and I like that. That's true.
That's right.
I hope the big state is completely exposed. The cleanup will start on January 20th, and I hope Trump does it right. So far, we are on the right track. Thanks. Again, thank you, Sergeant Dave. We appreciate it.
All right.
And then, Joe, this is a question for you. Do you think Biden will pardon others just so Trump can't go after them?
I think it'll be interesting to see who he pardons, what he does. Now, the premise that Trump's going to target people.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump, a major part of his campaign platform was ending lawfare.
Yes, exactly.
Because
he even talked about maybe he would pardon Hunter.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I don't think he would.
I don't know. A little facetious, but the point being that he was making that he's been on the receiving end of these sort of things.
And he never went after Hillary Clinton.
No. Yeah. So, I mean, so the fact that, he's been the one being targeted and it's funny talking about some of the hyperbole that revolves around Trump or Elon Musk or whatever, when, Trump's like, we got to end lawfare. And like, he may target his people. All right, he didn't do that the first term, but we know the Democrats did.
Yeah.
So, okay. Oh, he's, they don't like free speech and freedom of thought when, like, Musk is, like, basically saved free speech as far as the internet's concerned.
Yeah.
So.
It's cool he's evolved too, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like this Doge idea.
I think the Doge idea has got a lot of merit to it. Now, we need to do a lot more than just waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yes.
But I think the Doge is a good idea to bring, one, it's a funny name.
Yes, exactly. It's brilliant.
Two, to get these guys from outside who don't have a vested interest in the bureaucracy, aren't part of sort of the system, to say, hey, let's look at this objectively. Yeah. Let's just look at it as a project of
not as a lifetime bureaucrat.
Right. Where can we have efficiencies?
Someone's at my house.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm supportive of the Doge.
Yeah, me too. This has been some of the fun stuff here. That after Trump wins.
The Doge, that sort of thought is sort of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I think so too.
Of people coming in from outside to say.
But I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you about the party.
So I think some of the hyperbole around these people,
I do too,
is not indicative of what the Democrats have been doing, which has been, lawfare, and frankly, I think one of the biggest reasons Donald Trump is returning to the White House is the lawfare. Yeah. Because what it did in the Republican primary is it locked down sort of soft Trump supporters.
Exactly.
Saying, ooh, maybe there's some Republicans that were a little iffy on should we bring Trump back or not, or who they were going to support, or, they had a lot of variety of different opinions. And then they see them going after him on some of these, goofy charges, especially the case that probably should have been, you mischaracterized or miscategorized a payment in a private company, and instead of a fine or a misdemeanor, it's multiple felonies. People see that, and he becomes a martyr, and it locks down and intensifies greatly his support. So to sort of see what the Democrats are doing compared to what Donald Trump did, and we talked this before, this is a very unusual election where you had a former president running against a sitting vice president, initially a former president running against a sitting president. So you really had a lot of information about how they would govern, because in both cases they were all former or current national elected officials. So I think that the Democrats have spun up quite a bit some of this rhetoric regarding what Trump may or may not do.
And I know they deem themselves as heroes, or at least they put themselves on a pedestal, but I think Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, if I were a Democrat, they would be a social pariah. They would be a political pariah. I would say
they did. Alvin Bragg and Letitia James did more to get Donald Trump back in the White House than almost anyone.
I agree.
By abusing their power.
I couldn't agree more. Let's talk a little bit about local, because I don't want to. I know people like the national stuff, and I get it. But obviously, we talked a little bit about it. But it was a big day for Republicans. You won your race. We said earlier. People are just joining us. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But you had to be happy overall with how it all went down.
Yeah, and the one we haven't talked about yet is Judge McCarthy.
Yeah.
I was very pleased with that. Judge McCarthy was by far the most qualified candidate for the job. And somebody that I have had a chance to work with and interact with for many years. Prior to being a judge, he was, I was many years ago the Corning City Republican chairman, and Matt was, on my committee and one of the active members of the committee. So it's somebody I've sort of come up with and known a long time, and definitively the most qualified person for the position in the entire county, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. So to have him win not just win, but win extraordinarily decisively with an enormous margin of victory. I feel very good about jurisprudence for the next several years. We're going to have Judge Tunney, who was unopposed, and now County Judge McCarthy, and we still have Judge Watches for another, I think he's got 3 years left on his term. So we have a very experienced, very qualified team of judges in Steuben County. And then Mr. Ferratella will become Judge Ferratella in the city, also very qualified. He'll be there for the next 10 years. I take every race seriously as a county chairman. Who your legislator is or who your local officials are is important, but I take a special care with what we do with the judges, because every day they're making life or death decisions. And when they get in there, their terms are not 2 or 4 years; they're 10 or 14 years. So it's very important who we get, and to have that happen so well with our county and city judge positions was very good for the county.
What's it look like coming up next year? Isn't this crazy? Because I was talking to somebody the other day. Here's December. We should be talking Christmas. We should be talking this. Petition season is literally here. It's knocking at our door, basically.
We used to do petitions in June.
Yeah.
And so you had an off season, right, where you can say, all right, we had the election, we do the holidays.
And you think about if you want to run, or if you
think about you get to springtime, start talking about it. I literally, what I do, I put it on my calendar so I don't forget, is I get to like August.
Yeah.
And again, we're not, August, you're still months before November.
Yeah.
I start calling people for next year. And saying, hey, are you thinking of running, or are you going to run? Just so I know where we need to recruit candidates and what have you. Next year, countywide, there's 2 coroners positions that are up, and about half of the county legislature is up, and then a lot of local offices. About half the town board members are up. Most of the supervisors are up. So there is a lot of local and county elections next year in 2025. We don't have the federal or state stuff going on, but those are races where a single vote can make a difference. If you're talking about a city council or a town supervisor race or something like that. So just because you don't have the governor or the president on the top of the ticket, people still need to be engaged and be involved. And in many ways, some of these races impact you more. So, we were talking off air. I was dealing with some candidate recruiting stuff for next year literally yesterday, and you had the sheriff on, so I'm talking to him all the time about stuff, and talking to the leadership in the county legislature about stuff, and we want to go into next year with a good team and a good ticket, and we'll have a lot of local races on the ballot, and I'm confident that where there are primaries, the people will make the best choice as to who their candidates are. And when it comes to general election day, I'm very confident we're going to have another great election year. The other race that's up is Hornell Mayor.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We had Buckley on not that long ago.
Yep, and he's already had a very successful fundraiser where I got to be the MC.
Hey, good for you.
It was good, and he's already off and running. I think
he never takes anything lightly.
No, he takes it very seriously.
He's a hard worker.
Very hard worker. I think he is in a great position to be reelected as mayor of Hornell. That's probably the highest profile local race, so that's a full-time mayor's position.
And we always talk about people getting involved and how important, it's a theme on this program, how important it is at the local level.
Whether you're a celebrity or not.
Yes, exactly.
So all the non-celebrities out there, you've mattered just as, your vote counts just as much.
But,
and frankly, I care more about what you have to say.
Exactly. Yeah. But they can get involved in a couple ways. As you said, there's seats up. They can run.
That's right. Or for local office, it's very attainable.
Very obtainable. Or maybe it's as simple as helping someone that you know get petitions signed. Because petitions are almost impossible.
They're a pain, and especially, Frank, you mentioned the change in the calendar, where 10 years ago we would do these petitions. They would start in June, you turn them in mid-July. Now they start at the end of February, you turn them in at the beginning of April. And for anybody who's ever lived through one winter in the southern tier, you know that perhaps it might be more pleasant to be knocking on doors in June than it might be at certain times in the month of March, which is a little hit or miss. And you got 2 or 3 weeks before the clocks change. So in the evening, it's dark at the beginning of that time.
And in society, people just don't open their door anymore.
That's right.
Ring cameras are a great security, but it also means they're not answering the door on the other side.
That's right. And for instance, I mentioned that the countywide, we do have the 2 coroners positions. To get on the ballot countywide, you need 1,000 unique valid signatures. In a county that has a little less than 100,000 people, 1,000 is a lot. And they have to be Republican, they have to be registered to vote, they have to all these things. So it is a meticulous paperwork type process. New York State has some of the toughest ballot access. And so part of my job is, if you're a first-time candidate, you're somebody running for a county or local office, I'm the person you can call, just say, hey, this is sort of how you have to do it. I can guide you, and so can the wonderful staff of the Board of Elections.
They do a great job. Okay, we are out of time almost, but I got a couple comments I have to read. Elon, Vivek, and Donald are not just in it for jobs. They actually lose money by their service, unlike life career politicians, i.e. Biden. They didn't. I did i.e. Biden.
That I think that's something to credit somebody like Mr. Musk. I think especially when you're talking about the two things, and take politics aside for a second and just look at a broader picture. What he did preserving freedom of speech on the internet, I think makes him a historical level hero, like an epic like level hero. And then I'm a big supporter of space exploration.
Just for fun.
Apropos of nothing.
I
like what he's doing going to Mars. So
there you go.
I'm in many ways and many different facets, I'm a fan of Mr. Musk.
All right, last two comments. Looking very festive this morning. Yes, we're getting ready for the Salvation Army Telethon.
Yes.
And then finally, good morning, Frank. Good morning, Joe. My day is complete. A nice way to end it.
They're going to sleep.
All right. They're going to Well, Joe, Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for being
Merry
on.
Christmas.
All right. Join us tomorrow morning. Start at 6. Hey, Phil Palmisano's going to be our guest.
Hey.
The next governor.
I wish.
So make sure you tune in tomorrow at 6.